sex is designed to bring life,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
not just
Literally.
physical
Yeah.
life or literal life,
Mm.
but also life to the relationship and life
Mm.
to, like our connection as husband and wife. Like
That's a
that's
great
what
point.
it's designed
Yeah.
to do. Well, we just finished a series talking about the life of Adam and Eve, focusing a lot on Eve. And one of the things that I didn't get a chance to cover in my devotional series was talking about marriage and sex. And I thought it would be fun to try to have a candid conversation with my husband about marriage and sex. So here we are. So, Vincenzo, can you let our viewers know how long we've been married?
Well, viewers, we've been married, happily married, for
Mm,
15 years as of this April.
yes.
Yeah.
So we have some experience under our belt. Yeah. So, one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you is what is God's design
Hmm.
for marriage?
Okay. So let me just preface with something first. I am I'm not a pastor. I'm not a missionary. I'm not a Bible scholar. I've never been to Bible college. I am a man who has been a Christian for, I mean, for most of my life. I'm turning 42 next week as of this filming, and since I'm 8 years old, as I recall, anyway, back then I was led to Christ and have been a Christian since then. And so that is my experience and kind of my Christianity, right? And so everything I've learned about the Bible, about God, about Jesus, about Christendom, is through that lens, through what I've experienced in my life, right? My own takeaway. So I just want to preface with that. So whatever I say, it's just from me. It's not, formal education
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Well, that's great
Yeah.
because this is just, a place where we have conversations and we're just normal people,
Yeah.
right? That
I am a normal person.
study the
Absolutely.
Bible, study the people of the Bible in hopes that we can find hope and healing and we can find ways to apply the wisdom and truth of the Bible to our lives. So
Yes.
you are in good company.
As I try to do
Yes.
most every day. Yeah, apply the wisdom and truth
Yes.
of the Bible to my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, since you have just concluded a study, as you said, Adam and Eve, out of Genesis, I will go there, right? In terms of what is a biblical marriage, right? A godly marriage. In Genesis, Genesis 2, I believe, if I recall correctly, it says, "A man shall leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Good.
Very good.
All
That
right.
was good.
Yay. I got that right. It's one I've heard a lot. But what does that mean, right? It means that a man shall leave his family and make a marriage with his wife, with a woman. More specifically, man, woman, right? Opposite sex, men and women, um, leaving where they were at, their family, right? I mean, you grew up in a family, and you were a child of two different parents, and you must now leave them, right, and live with your wife, go be with your wife, and make a new family, and cleave, become together. I always like, in terms of the analogy, and like cleaving, is it rock or crystal or um, I'm blanking on the right mineral or but two things being cleaved into one another. You know what? I'll do this one. Like wood and wood glue. How about
Yes,
that? 'Cause that's
yeah,
something I have a little bit of experience in.
yeah.
And when you combine those together, right, they don't ever separate the same way.
Mm.
You're not gonna like if you take two, bits of glue, wood glue them together, and you break them apart. It'll not, you know,
It'll shatter.
yeah,
The wood
shatter.
will shatter, but that bond is still there.
That's a good word. Yeah, and so something's going to break apart and it'll be not the same that it was. Anyway, the whole point being, what is cleaving? You were cleaved together and you shall become one flesh. I'm sure that has a lot of different meanings. The way I think about that is
Yes.
is one flesh. You shall consummate the
How does
marriage.
the man
Yeah,
interpret one flesh?
yeah. The happy part of
The
marriage.
happy part.
You shall become one flesh.
The
Yes.
most enjoyable interpretation
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. So consummation, and now you are married. And something I was thinking about in that is that when that happens, when you are married, to have a ceremony, right?
Mm,
A covenant, if you will.
yeah.
And I think that that's important, right? So
Mm,
ceremony being something that within marriage, well, that it's important, right? You're making a covenant vow with your wife, as a husband does with his wife, and doing that in front of other people. Like for
mm,
us, I thought that that was very important that we did that.
yeah.
I guess I'm pausing because I'm thinking for a second. What does that mean, right? It means that you are making a vow between you and your wife, right, in front of a group of people, preferably people that you know, people that you love and who know you and are hopefully there to support you, right? That are there and want to encourage you and
Yeah.
want to be a part of your marriage in the sense that we want to send you off and yeah, that like I said, that support you. And to me, that's a important part of a biblical marriage.
Mm,
Doing that and having a covenant and having a ceremony. It's not exactly a one for one covenant is ceremony, but I think in a part of a covenant relationship, a ceremony is involved. For
mm,
any big important event in life, I think it's important to have ceremony around that, to have food as we do, to celebrate that, to have some cost involved. Weddings are not free, FYI, and it makes the event important, and it's not, there's not a somewhere in the Bible, at least that I'm aware of, that spells all of that out.
yeah.
But covenant is important um, in general, and that union is important. Before I can keep talking, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think of God's design for marriage in Genesis 2, we have, like you said, one man, one woman, not one man and 10 women, not one woman and 10 men. Like it's just one and one. And it was designed like God's intent was that it was good, it was beautiful, and it was designed to last forever because this was before the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve, they had eternity written in their hearts, and we do too. That's why it's so heart wrenching when there is death, and that's why we feel like this isn't the way it's supposed to be, regardless if you're a person of faith or not. Like when we lose somebody, we're like, we shouldn't have lost this person. And so we have eternity written on our hearts. And then obviously, when the fall happened, everything became tainted, and including God's design for marriage, as we see in politics and what's happening in culture and those types of things, but including marriage no longer lasts for eternity. It is until death parts us.
Yeah.
And death, again, is a consequence of the fall. And it is now impacting everything of God's design. But when I think of, God's design for marriage is, it was good. He said at the end of all creation, including marriage and sex, he said it is very good. And the fall and the things that have happened in the world, I mean, we could share our own stories of how marriage wasn't good for our parents or other people in our family. And we have friends where, marriage was not good and horrible things happened. And so you have, again, just this continual cycle of God's creation. It was perfect, it was good, it was just this amazing thing. And now in the fall, it is no longer that thing. And it is definitely hard to come back to God's original intent. And we unfortunately can't experience that in on this side of eternity. But we can work towards having a good marriage as best as we can in a fallen world. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Not to that, but in the interest of time, I wanted to, as you're asking me on my take on biblical marriage, I think that's all good, by the way. I don't
Oh,
have
thank you.
any disagreement with that, but I wanted to move on to another point that I thought was important
Hmm.
within defining a biblical marriage is sort of the purpose, at least an important purpose of being married. Going back to Genesis again, is to be fruitful and multiply.
Yes.
Yes. And what does that mean to be fruitful and multiply? Um,
What does that
yeah,
mean?
what does that mean? I was
Hmm.
thinking for a second, I was like, I think God tells the animals to go be fruitful and multiply, but I feel that we are included within that, right?
No, he says it both.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the blessing he tells the animals,
Mm-hmm.
and then he creates Adam,
And
and then he creates Eve, and he gives them the same
yes, okay, good.
blessing,
That's what I was
which is what
thinking.
it is. It's a blessing.
It is a blessing. So, and I think, well, I'll just say to be fruitful and multiply. My own personal belief,
Mm,
right, in terms of what people on this earth, in this short time that we have here on earth, is the number one thing that I think is important that we should do is to have children, right? And what do I mean by that? We get married, and like we just talked about, and we have offspring, we have kids, we create another generation, right? And we
mm,
raise them in our values, we bring them up into be healthy adults,
yeah.
and that's something that we leave behind, right? We newsflash, we don't live forever, right? And so at some point we have to leave this earth,
Mm,
and that's the one most important thing that we can leave behind is the next generation, our children, to continue, as God says, having dominion over the earth, meaning that taking care of the earth and everything that God has given us, right, to continue that. And hopefully, if you are a Christian, you're watching this, to continue in that faith. Hopefully, as parents, we are, as Christian parents, teaching our children our faith. We are instructing them. We are passing on our values to them so that they can continue to do the same thing and that
mm,
they understand where this world comes from, right?
mm,
That who created it, why it's here, who God is, all of that stuff. And we can go
yeah.
on. That's a whole other separate conversation. But
Mm,
to be fruitful and to multiply, I think it's extremely important within a biblical marriage.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I do have thoughts.
Okay.
I think this might be more in line with our next question.
Okay.
So if I could just put a
Put a
pin
pin in it.
in
Yeah.
this. But I wanted to also say that I think a lot of times when we talk about biblical marriage or God's design for
Mm-hmm.
marriage, there is a lot of intense discussion, debate, controversy because there have been many sermons
Mm-hmm.
taught from the pulpit of many doctrines of wives, you must submit to your husbands.
Mm.
And so I wanted to see if you had any insight into that.
Okay. Yes, I do. I think what you're talking about, this is something we've been, we're we're in Genesis a second ago, moving forward to the New Testament, right?
Very quickly.
Yeah, woo, I'm right through all that. Well, it's Paul
Mm-hmm.
in Ephesians, if I recall correctly, is
Mm-hmm.
talking about wives submit to your husbands, and husbands love your wives like Christ loves the church.
Yes.
There's more about that. And he goes on to kind of explain what that means, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's two parts. Let me just start with the husband part of that first, right?
Mm.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, husbands love your wives like Christ loves the church. And so to me, if I could paint a picture
Mm.
about that,
Yeah.
what does it mean to love your wife like Christ loves the church? Um, there's someone I know I'm going to think of here, and try and explain, flesh that out. If I could paint a picture. Imagine, if you will, someone, a husband, right, who every morning woke up early with the purpose of making a hot breakfast for his family. Okay, imagine that husband. Imagine that husband that over many years has worked on his career to be able to provide for his family,
Mm.
so that his wife doesn't even have to work. He
Mm.
works hard, but he does not work so hard that he's working 80 hours a week, having balance within that job so that he can spend time with his family. He can spend time with his wife, he can spend time with his kids. Imagine when he comes home, he helps take the kids to their activities. He offers that up. He prepares breakfast. Right? I said breakfast. He prepares dinner when he comes home, hopefully. He prepares
Maybe
dinner.
it's breakfast for dinner. Who
Yeah,
knows?
or you can have breakfast or dinner. I mean, bacon and eggs are great all the time, I
Yeah.
think. But he prepares dinner. He helps clean up. He reads to the kids, right?
Mm.
Reading is important. He makes sure that the family sits down at the dinner table and they talk, and he talks to everyone and talks to the kids and asks them about their day.
Mm.
He you know he makes time for his wife.
Mm.
He makes it important to have date nights at least once a month,
Mm.
and makes time for his children to invest in their lives and to spend individual time with those children. Imagine, if you will, a husband that comes from a place, right, where he was very much involved with his friends and had a different life. And in order to become one flesh with his wife, had to change relationships, had to make boundaries with people
Mm.
in order to become cleaved to his wife.
Yeah.
And despite how difficult that might have been, made that choice that his wife was more important than other people in his family,
Mm.
right? And left his father and mother, and like I said, as an extension, left friend relationships and made boundaries to show her, you are important. I want to make a life with you. You are, the one that I'm going to make a priority in this marriage. Imagine some of those things. And is that a man that would be worth submitting to? Maybe you can flesh out submitting and how you think about that.
Yeah, I think, in case you didn't notice, this man he's painting a picture of is him. I am a very blessed woman for sure. And so it's easy to submit to your authority because we work together as a team,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the things that you are strong at are usually the things that I'm weak at, like nature facts,
Not that that's
finances.
that crazy important nature facts,
Finances, like
finances, a little more
um,
important.
figuring out how to like fix things in the house because I give up pretty easily. You're analytical, you're able to research, and you are just so dedicated, and you will grind it out as a typical Marine will.
I try. I
You
get focused on
grind.
something and I must accomplish the
Yes,
task.
yes. So it's easy to submit when we come to a place of not necessarily disagreement, but if I feel something or have a viewpoint about something, and your viewpoint is different
Mm-hmm.
and we need to make a decision, I can trust that you're logical and you've analyzed it and you have our best interest for our entire family in mind, right? You've never used your leadership or your authority to harm
Mm-hmm.
or to manipulate or anything, or in a selfish way, of like, well, I want this, so I'm going to manipulate. Whereas, unfortunately, we've seen that happen living in a broken and fallen world. Pastors and, people that are teaching from the pulpit are living in fallen humanity. They are, a sinner just like me, just like you, just like you. And, they, over the course of history, have preached things possibly for selfish motives. We see that not only in the context of marriage, but with slavery and those types of things. And so it's heart wrenching to hear, and it's heart wrenching to hear women who have experienced that. Like, they're in horrific abusive marriages, and the pastor's like, well, you got to stay and you got to submit to your husband. That isn't necessarily what well, I shouldn't say necessary. That isn't what God's design is for marriage, is for a man to be abusive or harmful to his wife. His design is to cherish her, to love her, just like Christ loved the church. Like, what did Christ do? He loved the people that he served, and he ministered to them, and he helped heal them, and he walked them through life. And then he sacrificed his own life for them. And so when you have a husband that follows that example, it is very easy to submit to that authority.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to lean in and to work with you, and to know that our end goal is Christ, and our end goal is our 4 children being raised to know Christ, and to have some joy in this life as best we can. It's not, I think the Christian life has been touted of like, you have to like have your head down and not enjoy, not smile, not laugh, not joke, not have any pleasure, especially not sex. And it's just this grind until you get to heaven where, it's like painted like you're going to sit on a cloud with a harp, like singing, like these
Is that what happens in heaven?
lullabies,
Yeah.
like to God or something. I don't know. But like, it's like, when it's painted like that, it makes it, well, why on earth would anybody want to live that life?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm hoping that this discussion and being able to just talk about it is a safe place to figure it out.
Yeah,
So
I hope so. How are we doing on time?
we have like 2 minutes.
Okay.
So is there anything you would like to wrap up about marriage?
I do, but I think we need to take a quick intermission,
Okay.
and I want to touch on one more thing really quick before we move on to the next topic.
Okay.
All right, so I want to try something really quick that I've seen in other videos.
Oh man.
That if you're still watching, maybe you'll appreciate just a little bit. Can
Yes.
you can you snap us, or no, was it clap or snap?
I'm gonna
You're
snap.
gonna snap. Can
Yeah.
you snap us out and back in?
Okay.
All right,
Here
go
we
for it.
go. And we're back.
That was fast.
Woo! It was like a time warp.
Yeah.
All right. So we've kind of danced around this question.
Oh wait, there's something I wanted to bring
Oh,
up first.
sorry.
Yeah. So
Try again.
my last point on marriage that I wanted to bring up
Yes.
was being equally yoked. Okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah, staying in the New Testament.
Mm.
Well, this is in the Old Testament too, right? In Second Corinthians, Paul talks about being do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, right? And what does that mean? In the context of marriage, and he's probably talking about beyond the context of marriage, I think, just in general, but I relate this to a marriage, is you should have the same values with the person that you are married to, right? If you are a
Definitely makes
Christian,
things easier.
yeah, if you're a Christian and you should be married to a Christian. If you are a Protestant Christian, I would say you should be married to a Protestant Christian. If you are trying to think of another example, a particular denomination. If you are a Presbyterian, right, you should maybe be married to a Presbyterian. If you are Amish, you should be married to someone else who is Amish, and so forth, right? Being equally yoked with where you're at in
Mm.
your faith. If you are a Christian, you should not be married to, I don't know, a Wiccan, just to throw out a random
No,
example there.
definitely not.
Yeah. Probably should not be married to a Muslim. Probably not someone who's a devoutly Jewish. You should be equally yoked, and share the same faith, share the same values. Well, there's a whole lot of problems that would ensue, particularly with children, if you were not equally yoked, right?
Mm.
And we don't have to go down that road. That's a separate situation. But just to go back to the Old Testament for a second, right? God prescribes to the Israelites when He's giving them the law, right, that they are to be separated. They are to be a holy people from the people that are in Canaan, right, from the land that they're going into. If we're talking after the Exodus, moving and going into Canaan, into the promised land, to separate them, right?
Mm.
And there should be a distinction, and a part of that separation is they should not be marrying, the men should not be marrying the daughters of the Canaanites and vice versa. The Israelite women should be marrying the men in Canaan because they are not, I don't think it uses this exact, they are not equally yoked, but they don't share our values,
Mm.
right? And if you do, they're going to pull you away from me, right?
Mm.
God's talking about, for him, you are my people, I've set you aside, and that if you marry pagan women, they're gonna lead you to their gods, to Baal. We've been reading in our own study in the
Yeah.
Old Testament, and with the Israelite kings and the kings of Judah, that's a constant struggle, right? The people going to the high places and the people worshiping Baal, other gods, right? And a big part of that is marriage, right? It's talking about that in the royal family, the kings and all the wives that they have from other countries and leading them away from God, right? Obviously, we're not Israelite royalty; we are regular people, and but the same principle, yeah. We could talk
I'm a
about, yeah.
princess
She is a
somewhere.
princess somewhere. You are my queen. How about that?
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
But for the same reason, we should be equally yoked, have the same faith, so that um, you know, so that we believe in the same God, we worship the same God, and have the same values. So that was just one last point that I wanted to mention about marriage.
Yeah, I think even remembering that we should have like be on the same level in our faith, right?
Mm,
Because you and I had struggles in our dating and engagement year of, you know, I don't think it's fair to unsay that we were unequally yoked. We had the same faith, but our level of faith or our level of commitment to faith was on
mm,
a different level. And it took a while for us to line up, for us to have that same type of commitment.
yeah.
And then that led to some issues that we had to work through. And I think it's important to remember that as women, like we have an influence over our men. So, and I have the responsibility of influencing you for good
Hmm.
to walk towards God.
Yes.
And I also have the power to influence you to walk away from God,
Hmm.
depending on where my path is going.
Yes.
And leading into our next question, that is the power of the vajayjay.
You use that word. Yeah. That's a safe word here, though.
So,
I don't know what YouTube allows in
so
terms
I
of
don't know either.
anatomy. Yeah.
Hopefully, we won't get kicked off, but I know. So, with that funny statement, because again, we have candid conversations
Hmm.
here, and that's something that I'm going to mention in just a few minutes. But what is God's design for sex?
What is God's design for sex?
Yes,
Going, yeah,
the S word.
the S word. Um, Going back to what I said earlier, the purpose, I think, of a marriage is to be fruitful and multiply.
Mm.
And that is the instrument through which that happens. We're not going to have a biology lesson here, but
No, this is not sex
yeah,
education.
but sex is what happens, or is how you would, be fruitful and multiply, how you would have kids, right? And so what's God's design for that? I think there's a whole lot of different things we could talk about. Um, in terms of sex, I will. Okay, so let me start. Let me start here,
I
right?
know what he's
Yeah.
gonna say.
What's he? Where's he going? Um, I think that within Christian marriages, because that's what we're talking about, right? That sex should be a safe and healthy and regular practice. What do I mean by that?
What?
Yeah, what do I? Yeah.
What?
What? Safe, that nobody feels threatened, hopefully, and there's nothing leading to anyone being hurt, which I will say sounds like, well, of course,
Right.
but um, as I understand, people do some interesting things to try and spice it up in the bedroom. We're
Mm.
not going to go into that, but things can become unsafe, right?
Well, or even like things that make you uncomfortable,
Yes.
things that like mentally or emotionally could hurt you,
Hmm.
like watching pornography
Right.
or even doing something against somebody like they don't want to do it and you
Hmm.
force them to do it,
Yeah.
whatever that may be,
Yeah.
including actual sex itself. Like it should be the husband and wife come together
Yes.
mutually, right?
Yes.
Like
No.
nobody's forcing
Yes.
somebody.
Yes. Healthy and safe. Maybe we can touch on some of that in a second.
Hmm.
But uh, the part that I think is important is regular.
What? The
Yeah.
man
Yeah.
thinks that's the most important part? Are you
Yeah.
serious?
Well, and let me just explain myself with
Yes,
that.
of course.
Um, I do not think in a healthy relationship that sex is once a year. I don't think that sex is only for the purpose of creating children. In other
Mm,
words, we don't only have sex if we want to have a child.
right.
It's. I think God created sex for two purposes, right? To create children, to be fruitful and multiply, and
Mm-hmm.
also for pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
God designed us. He designed our whole bodies, and He designed, our genitalia, to use a biological term, with the ability to feel pleasure, right,
Yes.
for a purpose. And I think humans mostly uniquely are able to experience that. And I think that that's something that God blesses us with, right? To enjoy that within the confines of a healthy marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it, kind of goes in line with what happened in Genesis 2. God created man and woman,
Mm,
He united them and He blessed them, and He said everything is very good. And in that blessing He gave them was be fruitful and multiply. So, me, also not a Bible scholar, not anybody of significant importance in terms of my education, regarding the Bible, just my own study and my own life experience, I interpret that to mean that sex is good, right? Like
mm-hmm,
God designed it to be good, He designed it to be beautiful, He designed it to be enjoyable, and there was an additional purpose of this is the only way you can create life is by coming together with this person that you are united with and having this interaction with them.
mm-hmm.
And so that is God's design and it was good and beautiful. But as we've already discussed, with the fall came corruption and confusion, and we could spend a whole lot of time talking about all of the confusion that is happening in and I won't even say modern day society because we can go back thousands of years and study other cultures, and there is lots of confusion,
Mm.
especially regarding sexuality. You know, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun. So we are experiencing the same patterns and same cycles in our modern day world. But God's design is for it to be good and enjoyable. And one of the things that I've heard that I really like to think about is that sex is God's gift to the couple,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think about when we got married in 2009, which was really hard to get married in
What a great
2009.
time to be doing anything in 2009 in this country. Yeah.
um, Yeah, we were. I had recently graduated college, but unemployed. You were still in college, but unemployed.
Yeah.
And it was just, a great time. But we were gifted things as like, this is to help you in your new life together,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like a toaster oven or towels
Mm-hmm.
or, sheets, or here's some money, which was really helpful
That
that
always helps.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in 2009.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we were given these gifts, and I think it's just so fitting to think of God saying, this is a gift for the two of you,
Mm-hmm.
not for the three of you, not for the 10 of you,
Mm-hmm.
but for just the two of you to share together.
Yeah.
And going back to your analogy of the wood glue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when you share that type of relationship with somebody that you aren't married to,
Yeah.
and then that relationship dissolves, like I experienced before you, like I said, the wood will splinter.
Mm-hmm.
Like the wood will completely shatter apart, but that bond, that wood glue bond,
Yeah.
is it's unbreakable.
Yeah.
It is like we are stuck. And so I went through that. Like I went through that shattering
Mm.
of having to experience, everything in my life completely shattering when that relationship dissolved. And then that impacted our relationship and our marriage because everything that we experienced
Mm-hmm.
went through the filter of my past experiences. And that wasn't fair to you to have to, like, well, this was my past experience, so and thankfully God can heal and redeem, and I don't want to make it sound like there isn't grace and mercy through Jesus. There absolutely is.
Right.
And we worked through those things and everything is fine,
Yeah.
but that wasn't God's design. God never wanted me to be shattered.
Right.
God never wanted me to experience the pain of that. And that's why his design is within the context of marriage, within the bounds of marriage, because
Mm-hmm.
then that allows for you to have what you just described: safety, health, regular interaction in this way. And then that makes it so that, like, you're my person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I go to you, and and relating it back to, like, we will cleave together.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about when I was going through cancer
Yeah.
during a time in the past few years where people weren't allowed to go to the hospital, and I remember sitting um in that pre-op room,
Mm-hmm.
and like the only person I wanted there was you.
Yeah.
Like, not like I didn't want, and it's not that I didn't want like my family there, like it's not that, but like I wanted you because
Right.
you're my person, because I'm so connected to you because you know everything about me,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the only person who knows everything about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were leading to a little further on into a different point. Here's the handoff.
And here you
Yeah.
go.
No, I mean, so I was thinking of a couple different things, but to go back about 1 minute in terms of where you were when we met
Yeah.
and how long you were broken, right?
Yeah.
You were uncleaved from a previous relationship, and how we had to work through that in terms
Mm.
of you being able to get to a feel or to get to a healthy place,
Yeah.
right? To be able to have a regular, healthy sexual relationship within our marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? It took time. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, it newsflash, women have emotions and they feel those emotions.
What?
Now, yeah. Men have emotions too, but in terms of wiring, right?
Okay.
In terms of and I feel weird me being the one saying this, but I'll just since I'm bringing it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of the difference between men and women, right?
Mm.
Men in terms of sex are generally ready to go. You give me a time, a place, and the reason's already there.
Yeah.
I don't gotta wait. Women, of course, there are some other things involved in terms of being ready. Ready to have sex and where
Well, there
you
has
were
to
at
be
that.
a connection,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, and my whole mentality about sex was completely like like it was not through the lens of it is good and beautiful,
Hmm.
right? It was through the lens of this tainted, corrupted, confused world. And that's something that I can get kind of fired up about is because I feel that families
Hmm.
and the church have not done a good job of having conversations just like this one
Hmm.
of what God's design of sex is and that it is meant for good and it is meant for beauty and connection and to make life like that is like think about that like sex is designed to bring life,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
not just
Literally.
physical
Yeah.
life or literal life
Hmm.
but also life to the relationship and life
Mm.
to like our connection as husband and wife, like
That's a
that's
great
what
point.
it's designed
Yeah.
to do. But that's not the lens that I viewed it through. I
Hmm.
viewed it through like when I'm 15 years old and I have this idea that I'm broken and I'm not lovable and I'm not worthy, and then this boy comes into my life, and I don't want to like villainize him. He wasn't a bad person and he wasn't asking me for anything, but I felt like I had to give it because I was like, this is the only way that I'm going to be loved. And this is the only way that I'm going to be like worthy in his eyes. And that is not because he felt that way. He never implied that to me. It was my own thinking, my
Hmm.
own filter of things. And that is what I think so many women go through, and especially with a church culture of like you absolutely have to be pure, which I don't want to diminish
Hmm.
that there is a blessing of being a virgin and being pure and all of those things, but when it's so imparted on you, and then if you're struggling with your own thoughts and your own like self-worth, and then you end up giving that to somebody,
Hmm.
you feel complete shame, and sex is now this dirty thing. So on the morning of April 3rd, our wedding day,
Hmm.
if you and I had had sex, not good because
Yeah.
we weren't married.
Right.
The night of April 3rd, it is now
You were,
sanctioned
yeah.
by all parties and it is good and wonderful and you go forth and enjoy, right? And that really messed with my head because I was like, what am I supposed to enjoy? Because like 12 hours ago,
This was bad.
this was bad
Wrong,
and
and you
tainted
shouldn't do
and
it.
you
Yeah.
shouldn't do it. And now tonight,
Hmm.
walking into a hotel room is like,
It's blessed. It's holy. It's
what
sanctified. It
what are
is
we supposed to
good.
do?
Yeah.
And it's just this idea, and these are all because the fall has tainted and corrupted God's design.
Hmm.
But these are real emotions and real experiences that men and women go through, and I think it's a shame
Hmm.
that parents aren't having these conversations with their youth, specifically like high school youth, junior high school, and also that the church isn't having this type of conversation because everybody gets squirmish in their seats, right? Like I don't. Why is
Uh-oh.
the pastor
Yeah.
going to start talking about, and it's such a like sensitive topic, but it's something that just desperately needs to be talked about.
Mm,
And I think being able to like extend grace like you did to me, of like you walked me through all of the healing that I had to do like up here
mm,
for me to be able to have a healthy dynamic in our relationship in that way.
mm.
And because you had so much grace and patience and you were willing to do that, like now it's much better. And that's not to say that I don't still struggle. Like there are times that those thoughts will creep back in and I have to work through them,
Mhm.
but it's so much better. But how many times in how many relationships have people not had that ability to work through it through the lens of God's creation of this being good and beautiful and wonderful? I think it's worked through the lens of, well, let's go see a sex therapist who like
Mm.
gives you a page of like things that you could do to like implement and you're like,
Mm.
I don't know if that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, there's some emotional healing
Yeah.
that has to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to work through that. It's not a physical process. Well, you just need more sex, and then things will get better.
Right.
That's not really how that works. It's,
Mm-hmm.
when you're coming from that place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I want to go back to something you mentioned a minute ago, virginity,
Mm.
right? In terms of what we're talking about. Um, because I think that's something important to mention. It's so going back to the Bible, since that's what we're talking about here. Yeah, woo, shocking. It's there's a big emphasis put on the value of virginity and specifically female virginity. Obviously, virginity does apply to both men and women, but more specifically in terms of value for women, right? To the point that, to use an example from the Bible, right, going back to the land of Canaan, when the Israelites were conquering that land and reclaiming, not reclaiming the promised land, when they take over a city, sometimes it would be basically take out everybody except for um, virgins, essentially
Mm.
unmarried women, presumed to be virgins, right? Because they were deemed valuable, to the most valuable thing, a valuable asset. When you get married in the Bible, you should, the woman should be a virgin. I mean, it's specifically, um, you know, stated there, to the point that if you are a guy and you go have sex with someone's virgin daughter, guess what? You now have to marry her. You have taken something from her so important. She never gets that back. She can never give that gift to another man.
Mm.
No matter, despite the context, of the sexual relationship, of what was going on there. Guess what? It's time for a shotgun wedding.
Yeah.
Although shotguns didn't exist back in ancient Israel,
Bow
so
and arrow
yeah,
wedding.
it's time for a sling wedding, or some other, yeah,
Yeah.
spear something, right?
Yeah.
You were forced to be married,
Yeah.
and that it's in today's modern context, right? I don't know that virginity is valued anywhere near that it used to be,
Mm.
right? It's you know at least for women, and I'm thinking for men, right? For men, it's the exact opposite.
Mm.
If you're a virgin, at some point, if you get to college and you're still a virgin in, today's modern, culture and society, you're a loser. You haven't had sex yet? What is wrong with you, right?
Mm.
That's not something. It's not only is it not valued, it's the opposite. You're pathetic. We got to fix this. You need to go out
Mm.
there and you need to go not be a virgin right now. And for women, I think you could probably share on maybe what that the female context of that maybe in modern society, what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pendulum has swung. Obviously, in the Christian world and culture, virginity is still like encouraged
Hmm.
and presented as something that you treasure and that you give as a gift. But outside of the Christian world, right? Like if you just look at culture on the macro level, you see, women who I think are recognizing the power of their virginity,
Hmm.
and they want to like cash in on that potential, right? And so being able to say, like getting a verified document from a gynecologist stating yes, she is in fact a virgin, and selling that to the highest bidder, and being able to say, well, I'm going to use this money to go to college or to start a business or whatever. And so it's now become this, not a way for me to connect or give as a gift to somebody.
Hmm.
It's now become this idea of like, I'm gonna like become successful. I'm going to use this as a tool
Hmm.
to get what I want. And I'm not saying that's every woman. So don't like slide into my DMs like saying that
You
I'm
have
saying
DMs?
every woman out there is like that. That's not what I'm saying. But, I've just seen these news stories and I've
Hmm.
seen them multiple times of women, kind of having this mentality of like, well, if this is so valuable to men, that, you know, it can lead men down a very dark path.
Hmm.
I'm sure all of us have heard things, regarding human trafficking and child pornography and, all of these things that are just absolutely horrific and not God's design whatsoever, but again, the taintedness of this world has taken God's design and
Hmm.
completely corrupted it so that men are seeking virginity in any way that they can.
Let me pause right there. We need to take one more last quick break, and then we'll come
Okay, I
right
get to
back
do the
to where you
snap.
were. Do the snap one more time. This
Okay,
is fun.
ready? Here we go. And we're back. Another time warp.
Yeah. I hope that worked.
All right, so we were talking about like how God's design for sex has become completely tainted,
Hmm.
right? And that leads, I want to say all, not all people, like I'm saying every person in the world, but like it leads men and women,
Hmm.
to with the potential to become confused and to kind of follow down this dark path. But I would venture to guess that probably mostly men are engaging in things like child pornography or human trafficking, like being the ones to purchase that
Yeah.
and things like that. And I'm not in any way trying to like point fingers or shame men in any way, shape, or form. I'm
I
just,
don't know. If you're into child porn, maybe you should be shamed.
well, that's
Or
another
no,
topic for
you should
another time.
definitely be ashamed. Probably, yeah.
But I'm just saying that like it leads you down this dark path. I think of the interview that Ted Bundy did
Hmm.
before he was executed.
Hmm.
He's this serial killer that did horrific things to women before he murdered them, and in the process of murdering them, he did horrific things. And so the night before his execution, he said he would do one interview, and the only person he was willing to interview was, or have interview him, was Dr. James Dobson, who was the founder of Focus on the Family.
Hmm.
So, a Christian psychologist. So, he said yes, he would do it, and he went and interviewed him. And one of the things that Ted Bundy like wanted to make clear
Hmm.
was like, a lot of times when we hear really horrific things like that about somebody who's done horrific things, we kind of automatically go to like, oh, his home life must have been horrible, his parents were horrible, all this stuff. And so he wanted to make it clear like, I was raised in a loving Christian home. I
Hmm.
was not abused. My parents were fantastic. Like, this is not their fault. Like, they should not be condemned in any way. And that what ultimately led him down the path that this very dark path that he went down, that he was executed for,
Hmm.
was starting to watch pornography.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is if you watch porn, you become a serial killer. No, that's a joke. Yeah, obviously that's not what you're saying because
No.
millions of men and to some degree women watch porn around the world, and I think most of them are not serial killers. Most of them.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not. Yeah. Anyway, so terrible joke. Uh, hopefully someone's laughing out there.
Ah.
Yeah. But yeah, porn is not good. Let me just state that for the record. I don't think that porn, it's certainly not good in a Christian marriage, and I would argue it's not good in any marriage.
Hmm.
I don't think it's good at all. I don't think the entire industry, it's bad, right? It's exploiting women. I mean, for one, and women think that they're being empowered by being in porn, making money and taking control of their sexuality and their
I
lives
think
and
there's
all
some
this
women
stuff.
that might think that, but I
Sure.
would venture to guess, as a licensed therapist,
Hmm.
and women that I have talked to, especially living in a city
Mm.
that
What city?
has a lot of that industry in it. We live in Las Vegas, in case you're
Woo.
curious. But I would venture to guess that many women
Hmm.
are there not because they want to be,
Mm.
but they feel that they have to be, or that this is the only way,
Hmm.
that this is the only thing I have to offer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So,
and I think there's a lot of women that are forced into it.
yeah, no, that's definitely a contingent of women that are in porn and focusing. Let me speak well on that.
Candid
Yeah,
conversations includes flubs.
yeah, yeah. Well, and obviously, generally in porn, it's men and women. Although, not to go in all the details of porn, but all kinds of genres, right? All different stuff. But I think for men, it's I'm not even going to speak on men in porn, but it's a different situation, right?
Mm.
In terms of that, but terrible for women, terrible for men too. It's
Mm.
not good. And in terms of what we're talking about, right? The confines of a Christian marriage. Um, I'm just going to say on the record, uh, don't include porn. Men, women, don't watch porn. Don't even think about that as being an option. If you feel that your relationship and your sex life is not spicy enough and is getting boring, that is not something to be considering like, hey, you know what if we watched porn and together and trying to find out a way to convince your wife because it's probably going to be the man that thinks this is a good idea.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a world where the woman's like, guess what, I had an idea.
Mm.
No, it's probably going to be the man. And
Probably.
try and introduce that into your relationship to spice things up. No, it's not good. It is. I mean, going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? From a previous relationship, all these things and having images and experiences,
Yeah.
trauma and all this stuff. Then you take that to your current relationship, right? That's obviously if you're not a virgin, right? You have all that going into to a marriage. Just like that, having porn now introduces all this different stuff, different people, images, and into your relationship now, into your marriage bed, if you will, and contaminates that.
Mm.
And uh, another news flash, men think visually. Our
Mm.
brains work visually, and that'll be etched in your mind. I would just say that, as a younger man, when I wasn't married, that was something um, that I dabbled in. And dabbled is probably using it nicely, right? Um, I watched porn as a younger man before we were married, and I regret it. But it's I was not walking with the Lord as I should have been. I think you mentioned earlier, I was in the Marine Corps. Being a Marine is a very masculine
Different
environment.
culture for
Yeah,
sure.
very different culture, and that was something that was, at least where I was, and I'm not going to speak for the Marine Corps now or anything like that, among men that are very virile and young and all of that, that was something that was definitely engaged in and, almost celebrated. Like, everyone, watches and engages in that. And it's like, okay, this is something that, that was a part of my life for a while. Thankfully,
Acceptable, right? Like it
very,
was
yeah, very, yeah,
acceptable.
that's a word to use. And thankfully, before we got married, we had very good marriage counseling. And that was before even getting to that point. Trying, understood it wasn't good. And it was a struggle to, stop
Mm-hmm.
looking at porn.
Yeah.
It really was. It's something that as a man takes a hold of you and becomes an addiction. And wow, yeah, it's so powerful of one, right? For all these reasons, sex, visual,
Mm-hmm.
imagery, all that stuff,
Yeah.
and is hard to let go. It really was. And I'm not someone that has like an addictive personality, an addictive nature. I'm not someone that's easily addicted to stuff. That's a different conversation. You know me, and you know that. That's I. It's not within my DNA, right? Mentally or physically, to be addicted to stuff. That was something that was incredibly hard to stop doing and to get rid of.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was able to do that, finally, when we were being counseled during our marriage counseling, and rid myself once and for all of that practice. And I'm so glad that I did. So for me, that was a huge deal, and really affected me. It's permanent, right? I have, if you will, scars, visual scars
Yeah.
of that in my mind, and over time, but it doesn't go away. Like I said, we're wired visually, and yeah, it's awful. Again, you know, don't do it. If you're within the sound of my voice, don't watch porn ever,
Mm.
especially within a Christian marriage. It's not an option. Bad, bad, bad.
Yeah. I think it, just even thinking about, going back to God's design, right? Like, the anatomy
Hmm.
of like a woman and a man together,
Yeah.
right? Like it fits together perfectly like a puzzle, right? And like even recognizing that like as a woman, I am designed to
Hmm.
receive that connection and that pleasure and like this, just I'm designed to receive that pleasure from my husband,
Mm.
like fully designed. Like when you even look at and study the anatomy of like a man compared to a woman and like the nerve endings
Hmm.
in those areas of the body, like a woman has like 4 times more than a
Woo!
man does.
Lucky you.
I know, woo.
Yeah.
But that like those conversations aren't being talked about in the Christian realm at
Hmm.
all. And like even me saying that, like it's like turning all
Hmm.
wisdom in our culture. I did air quotes if you are
Yeah.
just listening to this, on its head of like what? Women are designed by God to receive pleasure.
Hmm.
I thought sex was just solely for the man. And
Mm.
it was like the wife's duty to like, well, I guess I just have to like do this so that you like don't go and watch porn or
Uh,
you don't go outside and get it from someone else. Like, no. That's not God's design at all. God's design is for like my body to receive pleasure, and obviously yours does too. But
hmm. I think everyone
but
knows that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's but just when you think about like this, that the beauty of God creating just parts of our body that are so sensitive and have
Hmm.
so many nerve endings for us to be able to enjoy
Hmm.
my connection with you. And when you and I are like connected on a mental and an emotional level,
Hmm.
I'm just going to be super frank. Like, it doesn't matter what position is being done.
Mm.
right? Like that's not where the spice comes into the
Mm,
relationship, right? Like it's the fact that you and I are connected. Like those are the moments that you and I will talk about afterwards of like, wow, that was really powerful and like nothing air quotes exceptional like happened. Like it wasn't a crazy position or a crazy anything, but you and I
mm,
were just connected emotionally,
yeah.
and that's what created the sparks and the spice and all of that stuff. And so that's not to say that you can't have fun and you can't do things and like try things as long as both of you are okay
Yeah.
with it and it's within the bounds of how God has created, because there are areas of my body that I don't believe should be receiving anything.
Yeah.
They are only designed to push things out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as long as it's
That has a
within,
design.
yeah,
It's not for sex. Yeah.
yeah. And so, as long as it's within like how God designed sex to be, you can have fun. You can quote unquote experiment. You can do all of those things. That isn't a sin, but it's the connection is
Mm,
what creates the spark and the like, just the things that everyone's like, well, we need to spice it up, right? And it's
mm,
like, maybe if you connected.
mm. Yeah. But is that not to say, just as a kind of final discussion point, that there's nothing wrong with, so, I mean, for example, if I were to say sex should only be in your bedroom, on your bed, in one position, and God has ordained it that way, and if you go outside of that, then
Mm,
you are sinning somehow. You have engaged in some kind of sodomy or something like that. Um, I would. I'm pretty sure I know what you're gonna say, but there is some room and some flexibility, if you will, to um, wanted to explore, right, in different places.
mm,
You know, and by places I mean not just in the bedroom, right? I mean now personally, I'm not sure how you would do this safely and discreetly. Sex on the beach is a term, right?
right, yeah.
Um, I don't imagine that would
That's
be
like
comfortable
sand.
in
Like, why would
sand
that
and
even be? No, I just don't
you know,
understand why that's a
how
thing.
about sex in the jungle? How about that?
Oh, spiders.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I have a thing with spiders. No.
Yeah, maybe I don't know where Adam and Eve, consummated their marriage, but probably not in the marriage bed. Probably
Yeah.
somewhere a little outdoors within nature.
Well,
But yeah.
yeah, I think that kind of goes back to like, things that have been taught from the pulpit,
Hmm.
right? Like, that sex is only supposed to look like this or be this way or for
Hmm.
only this purpose, and that has done more harm than good,
Hmm.
But I do think that at least for women, and I would even venture to say for a lot of Christian women,
Hmm.
because we deal with a lot of shame and we deal with a lot of, just not feeling proud about our bodies or not liking our bodies, or we can't live up to the standard of like somebody that maybe our husband saw in a pornographic film.
Mm.
Like I don't look like that, like
Yeah.
and so there's just a lot going on inside of a woman's body. So the idea, or inside of, yes, inside a woman's body, but also definitely in our head. But there's just like a lot of fear of wanting to like leave the bed,
Hmm.
right? And then plus it's like just comfortable because I don't want sand all over me. I don't need no spider crawling on me,
You don't need
right?
animals
We have four
watching. Yeah.
children, so if like we went into like our kitchen, like
Never happened, by the way. Yeah.
that has not happened, but like just the hypothetical of like our kid coming out to get water,
That would be
like
awkward, to say the least.
so it's, I think there's like things that women are thinking of like not logical. That's when
Yeah.
women become logical, right? Like not logical, no, we're just gonna stay right
Yeah.
here.
I can lock the door here, and
Yes.
the bed is soft and
Yes.
comfortable.
And there's no sand and
Yeah,
no
there's no
spiders.
sand and there's no spiders. And I got my Amazon Echo, and I can put on the smooth jazz.
Yes, the smooth
Yeah,
jazz. You
yeah.
can't, forget the smooth jazz.
And I could
So,
light the candle
yeah,
or the fireplace when it's working.
right.
When it's working.
And so it's just, but I think like creating that atmosphere for a woman in terms of like talking about God's design for sex, but now we live in a fallen world,
Mhm,
right? Like if you want to have that connection with me, like
mhm,
it's going to have to be on my terms. And I know that that sounds like I'm high maintenance or like whatever, but that's the reality. Like
mm,
I'm going to have to feel safe and comfortable
mhm.
to be able to give myself fully to you. And if
Yeah.
I'm in the jungle and there's any chance of a spider potentially climbing on me,
Megan hates spiders, by the way.
and the ones in the
Arachnophobia.
jungle are
Yeah.
really big.
Mm-hmm. Especially in well, not that I don't know. Does Australia have jungles? I don't think
Oh
they
my,
do.
we're not even going to talk about Australia. I am not going to be in any mindset to like
Mhm.
connect with you,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm going to be like, that thing is going to climb on me and like
Yeah.
eat me.
Okay. It's certainly gonna bite me, and my arm's gonna swell up, and I'm not
Yes.
gonna be happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you're going to hear about it
Yeah.
because it'll be all your fault.
No jungle love.
No jungle love.
No sex on the beach.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all that to say that like I think you have to take it couple by couple and you
Mhm,
have to be able to have those conversations again
mhm,
if you want to have if sex should be safe and regular
mhm.
and healthy,
Yes.
right? Then
Yes.
that's going to look different for every single couple and
Mhm.
what they're comfortable with and what they're okay with doing.
Right.
Their convictions are going to be different. But I think that that's a place for you to have those conversations with your spouse of
Mm.
like what you're okay with and what you want to try and what you are not okay with and what you are not open to
And
trying.
that's something that just to put a pin on this entire discussion, I
Mm.
think, with all of this within the confines of a godly biblical marriage, sex within a godly biblical marriage, communication,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
As with all things, how important communication is in our daily life, at work and at home, and definitely within a marriage. I think that's been a big positive thing for us. Being open and having open communication about where we are at
Mm-hmm.
within within our marriage, just in general, right?
Yeah.
Always talking about where we are at, and as you will tell me, my love meter is low, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, that's a sign to me, which I appreciate, by the way,
Yeah.
that I need to step up my game in being able to speak your love language, right?
Well, we're not connected,
Yeah.
right? Because we have four kids and we're a homeschooling family. Four kids is busy with their activities and lessons
Hmm.
and all of these things and we have other things pulling at our lives and we are very blessed. I don't want to make it sound like I'm ungrateful, but
Hmm.
there are many times that like the week will go by and the only conversation that we've had is like good morning. How was your
Hey,
day?
Rumi, what's up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like and then like all right, going to bed. And so being able to let you know before I'm like like I'm yelling at you and you're like, why is she so like being such a brat today?
Mm,
Like I'm able to say, hey, I'm not feeling connected to you. My love meter's low. Like I need you to like go on a walk with me tonight, or I
mm.
need you to like do
Yeah,
something.
we need to go on a date.
Right.
It's the pre-described 1 month. Life got busy,
Yeah.
and we need to get back onto that routine and
Yeah.
schedule that date. Yeah, because the love meter is low,
Right.
And I would just say that's one thing, or the conversation, of regularity, like we talked
Mhm.
about before. What does that look like for, your individual marriage, for
Right.
our individual marriage? We don't have to go into those details, but I will just say
Those
that's,
conversations are good.
yeah, have those conversations. They should be had so that both people are happy, right?
Mhm.
That, I mean, because that's what you're trying to do. Work towards both people being happy with their marriage, both people being happy with their sex lives, and you may find out that you both have different ideas of what regular means, of what healthy means, of what safe means, based
Right.
on past experiences or interpretations or whatever it is, right? Two different people are bound to have, two unique experiences and views on things, even if they're equally yoked, right?
Mm.
In terms of having the same faith and the same value systems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to allow our viewers to take a peek behind the curtain in regards to God's design for marriage and or sex?
Is there more? Is there something you're specifically alluding to?
There's always
Yeah.
more. But wait, there's
Yeah.
more.
Um,
Well, anything that we haven't, that we haven't touched on that maybe you're like, I wanted to share that or.
okay, so one final thing, I will just say that if we can go over quickly, because this video is already going to be kind of long.
I'm long winded. Sorry.
You're I'm always the one that gets in terms of being long. For people that know us, I'm the long-winded one. I'm the owl on Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a real laugh right there. Yeah.
You've never said that, but it's so true. Oh my gosh. Talking about imagery, that's going to be in my head forever now.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm totally poo. Where's
Yeah.
the honey? Where's the sugar?
Where's the sugar? Anybody?
I think I have a thought. Where is
Yeah.
it?
Final point is that to have honest, age-appropriate conversations about sex with children.
Mm,
I think that's one kind of final thing that I think, as a final takeaway
yeah.
within this entire conversation, so that they don't get to a place in their adult life having no idea, right,
Right.
about what that looks like or what that should be, right? We're just talking about communication between you and I. Having that communication with your kids, I think, is very important, something that you should do, because you don't want them to become adults and have not heard it from you exactly what that looks like, and to kind of discover it on their own. I think that's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for all the things that we've talked about already, for having trauma, losing your virginity early, pornography, all that stuff, right? If you're not having those conversations, you should be having, conversations about marriage and what that looks like. And we exemplify that, through our marriage with our children. They see what that looks like, right? But we talk about it too, and discuss things, and we don't hide anything from them. We want to be open in, all those things that are important to us and that we value, but marriage and sex as well. And again, age appropriateness.
Hmm.
Final thoughts on that before we close out.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly because the reality is if we're not having those conversations with our four kids, there is an entire world of people that are more than willing to have those conversations with
Mm-hmm.
our kids
Yeah.
in a belief system that we do not hold to. And so it's no longer the question of like, well, I don't want to talk to my kids about sex and about marriage because they're just too young, or like it's just not comfortable. Like that's no longer anything that should be in our minds. It should be on the forefront of our mind because there is just like just even the image of like rabid wolves just trying to get to your kids in their mentality and trying to get them to believe and to ascribe to a certain philosophy when it comes to sex. And so just we as Christian parents have to be
Mm-hmm.
we have to be ahead of that, and we have to be the ones to be willing to have these types of conversations with our kids so that as they go through life, they can see, like my children can see us as a safe place to come because they know that we're going to give them true information,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is how the baby got in my tummy, not a stork, not a fairy, not like magic, not God put the baby there, which God does knit each baby in the womb, but aside from Jesus,
Yeah.
it was a man and a woman who came together. And so being able to have those conversations, and I think even to start helping them see that, like, what we're talking about today, that God's design for marriage and sex is good and beautiful, and it is not something that you should fear or feel shamed about if you are having sex and you are married. Like, you shouldn't. It should be
Yeah.
enjoyed,
Yeah.
it should be treasured, and it should be, just this unique aspect of a relationship that you have with that one person. And having those conversations will hopefully allow for, when our children are adults, for my sons to come to him if they need to or want to be like, Dad, like, I'm struggling and I can't connect with my wife. And then you can minister to them and you can help guide them. And same thing with my daughters. Like, how do I have sex after I have a baby? Well, I've had four, so we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And, not that I have to share the details of what it was like with their father, because hashtag weird, but to be able to say, like, I've been there, and here are some things that might help direct you to find what will work for you after you have a baby, or after you
Yeah.
are, whatever happened in your life. So, all right. And with that, I think we have touched all the things when
Yeah.
it comes to God's design for marriage and sex. We want to thank you for joining us. If you are still here, you are amazing and we love you so much.
Thank you.
So, but we hope that this was just an encouragement to you. And we would love for you to like and subscribe, because if this is something that you enjoyed, we are thinking about doing more discussions like this in the future. So thank you for so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you
so
too.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being willing to just come and have this candid conversation with me, your wife.
Mm.
And you can thank him for us even being here, because it's been an uphill battle to get me to do this.
Maybe
So
that's a different story for another time.
yes,
But yeah.
but so
Yeah, well, happy to be here.
yeah.
Fun to have conversations with your wife about sex and marriage. Yeah. No, but I mean, if for anyone that knows me, I'm an open book. I like to talk about everything.
Wow, remember?
Yeah, I'm long-winded. Yeah. Whew, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what it is. But I especially enjoy having conversations with my beautiful bride, and happy to, share everything that we talked about today. And yeah, I hope whoever's listening, that you get something, valuable from this, because
Yes.
that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Megan's search for meaning. We what's the phrase that you say?
Where we find hope
Yes,
and healing.
hope and healing. So
Yes, so
yeah, I'm hoping yeah, that you guys are finding hope and healing in the journey. Was that what it was?
something like
Something
that.
like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been fun.
Yes,
So
so thank you
yeah,
so much. We would love to hear anything that spoke to you in the comments, because, we read them all
yeah,
and we try to respond to them all. So, but let us know what your thoughts are and how we can be praying for you in your specific situation and your marriage, whether present or future, and what we can do to just minister to you. And until next time, believe it or not, we are moving past Genesis 4. So we will be releasing some new content soon. So we hope that you will join us for that. But until next time, we will see you there. And remember that you are created with purpose and you are loved. Bye.